I need better Wi-Fi coverage on my off-grid property than what Starlink is providing, and I think this may be the answer. Welcome to the Hippie Geeks! Let's get the Wavlink AX3000 WiFi6 outdoor access point unboxed and set up, and see how well it works. The first thing you are going to find in the box is the access point itself, and without the antennas attached, it is pretty compact. Speaking of the antennas, the longer box is going to contain all 6 of the antennas that hook up to this unit, along with some heavy-duty zip ties that you would use to attach the unit to a pole if that is how you need to mount it. We are going to set those aside for a minute and open up the other box that has the rest of the accessories. You will find a short network cable along with a PoE injector. This is a Power over Ethernet access point, which means that it will receive both its network signal and power on the same cable, which makes it really easy to set up. If you do not already have a PoE switch, however, this little unit will take the signal from your existing network, add in the power with the wall plug, and then send out the PoE signal along the single cable so that it still works the same for you. I do have a PoE switch, however, that I use to run our security cameras, so I will just be able to plug the AX3000 directly into it. Now, it is time to go ahead and attach all of the antennas, and there are 3 each for the 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz bands that the router will use. I didn't notice it right away, but both the antennas and access point are marked either 2.4 or 5, and the antennas will need to match the port that they go to. I didn't notice it until the end, but I managed to actually get them mostly correct anyways, and just had to swap a couple of them around. Once the antennas are on the unit, it is going to make it considerably less compact, but that is the price of having all of this wireless potential. At the bottom of the unit is the network cable plug, and doing this part correctly will make sure that the port is weatherproof. First up, you need to pass the cable through the outer ring that will tighten everything up at the end, followed by the gasket and the gasket holder. Once all of that is ready, you can plug the network cable into the unit itself, and then screw the gasket holder into the access point until it is tightened all of the way down. After that, you just need to bring the outer ring up and over the top of the gasket that should be held securely into the little plastic fingers, and then just tighten that all of the way down. That will squish that gasket and get it to make a weatherproof barrier that will keep your electronics safe. Now that it is all assembled, it is time to get it mounted. For now, I am planning on mounting it to the side of the studio here, but this may change over time as I decide how well this is going to work. I may eventually move this up onto the ridge by the cabin, but I don't have 200 feet of network cable at the moment to run it that far, so this will work for now. Wavlink sends a paper screw hole guide, which is really nice, and that is what I am going to use to place my screws. Don't be like me, however, and make sure to check that your screw heads will actually fit into the holes on the mounting bracket before doing this. I use star-bit screws for pretty much everything, but the heads for them are huge and often do not work for something like this. I will notice what is happening eventually and grab a different set of screws to use, but if I had just checked in the first place, I could have avoided this step entirely. I do eventually get it mounted, however, and now it is time to get it plugged into my PoE switch to power it up and then get it set up. I am going to be setting this up on my laptop inside the studio, so the first thing to do is connect to one of the unit's wireless networks. Either one will work, and as soon as you do the first time, it will load the Wavlink login screen so that you can get it set up. The default password is admin all in lowercase, and that is going to get into the setup process. You will select your country and time zone, which for me would be United States and Hawaii. Next up, you need to set up the new admin password, and you can see that Dashlane really wants to set one up for me. I already have one that I want to use, however, and after putting it in twice, you can move on to the next step. I am going to set the network ID to TARDIS for now, though that will also likely change in the future. Set your Wi-Fi password, and then you can save it, and the router will let you know when it is done updating. If you change the network name, you will need to reconnect to the new Wi-Fi network with the password you set up so that you can continue configuring the unit. Once you are reconnected, log into the AX3000 with the new admin password, and you will be greeted with the home screen. From here, you have a couple of options that you can choose to finish setting the unit up, but the screen here will let you know most of the important info at a glance. If you click on the wireless tab, you can change the various settings for your wireless network, most of which we have already set up. The Advanced tab will let you get into the rest of the device settings, and this is where you can change things like the mode it operates in, parental controls, signal adjustment, and network diagnostics. Eventually, I will get in here and change the network address from a DHCP assigned address to a static IP, but for testing purposes, I am pretty much going to leave everything at its base settings. The first testing I am going to do is on my laptop using speedtest.net, and over 3 runs I saw results of 336, 245, and 282 megabits down using the AX3000. Next up, I am going to connect to the Starlink unit and run the same test 3 times. That gives me results of 166, 111, and 168 megabits down, which is already interesting as I am sitting right next to the Starlink unit, while the AX3000 is outside the studio on the other side of the wall. Next up, I am going to be standing right outside the studio, running 3 tests on both networks. The Starlink unit is now inside the studio, and I am standing outside next to the AX3000. We are going to see some pretty poor results from the Starlink router as it gets 122, 63, and 42 megabits down, while the Wavlink gets us 224, 217, and 368 megabits down. These are actually pretty poor results for Starlink, and you will actually see it get better in the next set of tests once I move further away, which will be pretty interesting. For the next set of tests, I am walking down the driveway 100 feet, and at this point, I still have line of sight to the studio with no real obstructions. The Starlink unit is going to pick its numbers up a bit and give us 131, 152, and 95 megabits down, while the AX3000 is going to be really strong, coming in with 256, 290, and 274 megabits down, which is really great. One thing to remember is that these tests are not super repeatable, as both Speedtest and Starlink itself can give variable results, but it should give you a decent comparison point between the two. For the next set of tests, I am going to move another 100 feet down the driveway, so we are now 200 feet away from the studio, and there is now a sizable patch of trees between me and the building. Between the distance and the trees blocking the signal, we are going to see quite a drop in the Starlink performance as it drops down to 35, 39, and 24 megabits down, with the upload speeds also being cut in half. The Wavlink is going to drop as well, but we are still seeing 64, 54, and 61 megabits download, but the upload speeds are still maxing out what the Starlink service is capable of. The next set of readings are at 300 feet away from the studio for the Starlink results, which is the furthest away that I was able to get any results from it. Not only am I even further away, with even more trees between me and the studio, there is also now a 6-foot high berm of driveway between me and the studio, making reception even worse. The Starlink unit is going to come in with 10, 17, and 11 megabits down, and the upload results are even more dismal at 1 megabit. With the Wavlink results, I was able to make it another 75 feet down the driveway for a total of 375 feet away, with all of the same trees and the earth berm between me and the studio. It was still able to get 34, 48, and 35 megabits down, while the uploads were still at 13 megabits up, which is really impressive. If I walk any further down the driveway, I will pass another earth berm, and that manages to kill all of the signals to the point where I am not able to get any signal at all, which is not surprising. To be honest, I was not expecting the Wavlink AX3000 to get anywhere near that much range on our property, as it really is a pretty much worst-case scenario with all of the trees that we have and the earth berms. If you are looking for an easy way to improve your Wi-Fi signal, I can highly recommend giving this unit a try, as I am really impressed with its performance in our very challenging environment. A big thank you to Wavlink for sending over the AX3000 for us to check out, and if you want to try it out for yourself, I will leave a link to it in the description below.